I'm Angel Labundez. I'm Director of Enterprise Architecture at 3Cloud. 3Cloud, we're a, a big Microsoft partner. We were the US Partner of the Year last year. And I actually came onto 3Cloud just this year by way of an acquisition. Um, but we're all 3Cloud now, so not going to go into that. But yeah, we have a lot of expertise around Fabric, Databricks, Azure. Um, we have an offshore team. Um, yeah, and we support all kinds of analytics projects. We have an app innovation practice. We have managed services, cloud infrastructure. So just a lot of folks. We're about 1,100 people. So it's a pretty big firm, and we have a lot of expertise. And I'm excited to talk about these genies, like Greg just alluded to. So I'll share here a deck with you guys. But if you guys have any questions, like Greg said, yeah, for sure, let's keep it interactive. And I'm even happy to share, like, if you have questions about Databricks, I'll answer them. Yeah, well, another piece of information. I mean, I came onto the Databricks scene pretty recently, I guess within the last 2 years. That is, I started with Databricks in 2023, and went to the Data and AI Summit by Databricks in San Francisco in that same year, and my eyes were opened. Let's just say I did not know the world of data and AI was that it coexisted as much as it did
Mhm.
until I went to that conference. So I'm super excited about these capabilities that I'm about to show you guys, and hopefully it'll show you guys that it's not very hard. It's not very hard at all. And but by the same token, if you want to do it for, an actual for your customers or for your bosses or whatever, getting them to do the right thing, that's where it's harder. But of course, if it were easy, everybody'd be doing it. So um, I'll give you guys the tips and tricks that we've been through, having implemented these things in the past 8 to 10 months, and we're still learning. So there's still more to come. Um, so I guess I could start sharing. Let me share my screen here.
Yep, you see it.
Okay, cool. Presenter mode. There we go. Okay. Um, so um, the way I kind of like to start this talk is by explaining a little bit about how you should think about these types of AI projects going in. We hear a lot about AI, AI assisted development, vibe coding, AI, inside of Copilot, GitHub Copilot, Perplexity AI, Claude. There's all these AI tools, right? But um, you know, besides that, like, we're all developers and architects here. I think if you come to this talk, you've learned how to build this kind of capability. But for others that are still learning to use Copilot and everything, there's still a lot of adoption to be had. Not everybody buys into the AI wave. And a lot of it is because they still are, I mean, and I like to think of it that they haven't found their light bulb moment. They haven't had that aha moment where, like, oh, AI could do that for me. And one of the stories I like to say is, you know, when I, um, at my last job, a couple weeks before I had left that job to move on to my new job, I started to leverage, we had an executive assistant. Before those last 2 weeks on that job, I was there at that job for 2 years. I'd never used the assistant. And why is that? Is because I was never comfortable. I always thought, like, I don't want to use an assistant. Like, I should be able to do this work myself. And those last 2 weeks were the most productive weeks I had ever had. And it's because I just was not comfortable. I just was not comfortable with letting an assistant do the work for me. And and that's what AI is, I think. If you see or hear people that are struggling still to adopt AI tools or not just going to AI for help, it's probably that very thing. It's just they're not used to it. So I ran into this great book called The AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods. If you haven't um, picked up a book in AI, this would be a great one to pick up. It really gets you to think about AI um, and ways that you can use it right away. Um, and it goes beyond like, coding and development type of stuff. I mean, we're talking about having AI like challenge your thoughts um, around anything. Family, it could be even about family, or it could be like, I used it one time to try to give me ideas for birthday presents, for my kids and for my wife. Um, so um, whatever this is for you guys, your light bulb moment, that's where I feel like people are still struggling to get that one moment. Because um, if you had it, it'd be like kind of like how Google, when Google first came out with its search capabilities, not everybody bought into it. Then slowly but surely, everybody figured out, you could search for anything. Now everybody knows, they say the term, I Googled this, or I Googled something, or blah, blah, blah. So now it's like AI is starting to come on, and it's important that people get over their fears. So last bit about a couple of the bullet points in this book is that I really liked the way it kind of framed AI was that um, if you're still afraid, you have some indication that you're afraid that AI is going to do more for you than or it's going to replace you, or uh, that it's not as good as you could do it yourself. And that's true. The AI is not good as you. It's not meant to replace you. It's meant to enhance you. And it's not meant to automate you. You have to do what Scott, you were saying with Redis and, with, uh, with that kind of stuff. And like, that stuff still requires human knowledge and human interaction to figure out how to make stuff useful for people. Um, but what I hear time and time again with tools that I'm about to show you, whoops, in the Genie is it's not accurate, or it doesn't work, or I could just do it. I could just do it. Why do I need AI to do it? I could just do it. What you should be thinking when you hear these things is when it's not accurate, how could you make it accurate? It doesn't work. Is it what doesn't work? Is it the tool or is it the person? I can't tell you how many times in testing these genies, people will ask questions and they're so vague. They're just so super vague. And it's like you got to know how to be a prompt engineer. So it's like kind of like how we all had to learn how to search in Google. Now we have to learn how to give context to an AI when we want a specific answer. So again, I ask the question, is it the tool or is it the person? In other words, is it a bug with the tool or the genie, or is it a training exercise? We got to train the user on how to ask the right questions and how to ask them, what terms to use, etc. And then if the person's like, I can just do it, well, if you could just do it, what are you not doing? If you're answering some ad hoc data question, what is that? That's taking your time away from something else, right? And one of the big advantages I saw to these genies is I would be able to give a person a tool where they could just ask a question, and you'd get the data results you'd need right away without me intervening. And that would save me time. It saved my whole team time for questions that are, simple, to answer. And now we have tools that can do that at our disposal. So will this AI tool is one of many that you will come across when you hear generative AI. And the question here that the book poses is, will generative AI improve your outcomes? And I have found this to be 100% true. Yes, it will improve your outcome, but you have to have quality data. That's number one. You can't have good AI without good data. You got to have the right mindset for you and your team and everybody who's going to be downstream of you. You got to have the belief that AI will be useful. You can't be afraid. You can't say it's not accurate. Otherwise, it's doomed to fail. And if it's not for your end users, use it for your data teams. I have right now a data team of 6 people on my team directly. We have other BI teams and data scientists that use our data. But really, I tried to design this tool for us first because I knew that if we found it useful, it would eventually be useful for everyone. So when you think about it that way, you worry less and less about how somebody's going to perceive it when you know that it's useful for your team. You just know it will be. So there, I know Scott and maybe others that are listening to this for the first, you've never worked with Databricks, or probably not a whole lot about what it has in it. And like I told you guys, up until a couple of years ago, I didn't even know everything that it had in it. So this is my way of trying to give you guys just a very quick overview of Databricks, because it initially came out as a way to do data warehousing on data lakes. And now, many years later, Databricks has pioneered this concept of the lake house. The founders of Databricks actually coined the term lake house, which is a data warehouse built on top of a data lake. So you'll see down here at the bottom of this house graphic here, the cloud data lake. Databricks can work on Azure, it can work on Amazon, and it can work on Google Cloud. Uh, but fundamentally, your data is stored in a data lake. Um, and then on top of that data lake, so your data lake can host anything. It can host images, it can host HTML files, it can host JSON files, CSV files, whatever, right? That's unstructured data. Sometimes you get structured data like CSVs or data of that nature. But on top of that data, you can write what are called Delta Lake tables. Delta Lake is an open table format that they don't own, they don't maintain. It's an open source data format. There's other tools like Fabric, for example, Microsoft Fabric, it too works with Delta Lake. So you could technically take the files from Fabric and make the Delta Lake files and make them work in Databricks if you wanted to. So Delta Lake, totally open table format. The other added benefit, there's a lot of benefits to Delta Lake, but aside from the performance and the optimization um, uh, kind of characteristics of Delta Lake, the last thing I'll say about Delta Lake that I learned, which is super useful, is time travel. You can go back into time and figure and query different versions of the table as they were 7 days ago, 30 days ago. It's configurable and it's all built into that open table format. Uh, Unity Catalog is a unified governance platform that covers everything in this house. So tables, schemas, catalogs, SQL alerts, dashboards, Genies, Databricks apps. They are all governed under one security umbrella. You don't have to go to, for those of you, that have built, solutions using different Azure services, and you have to set up access to the database and access to the web directory and access to the functions and access to the key vault, all that stuff, right? Well, with Unity Catalog, all the stuff in this house is under one umbrella. So now you can create security groups for your BI teams, your data science teams, your data engineering teams, even your end users, if that's kind of the platform that you're maintaining. And then give them access to just what they need, whether it be a Genie, a dashboard, a table, whatever. There's ways to set up the groups under this one house. And it's tied with the benefit of doing it on Azure is that it's tied with Entra, or what used to be called Active Directory. Okay, I think that's good. I mean, I've already talked about the data warehousing aspect. You can do you can 100% do data engineering and data streaming. Um, Databricks kind of did originally it was set aside, or not set aside, but designed more for data scientists in the beginning, but now many years later it's now a platform for everything: data warehousing, analytics, data engineering, AI. So but it started off as a data science tool. um, okay, so um, this is another way. It's a similar breakdown, except I go into a little bit more of the things that are useful, both in terms of data platform type of stuff and Genie, what's specific to Genie. Genies, I'll go into detail here in a little bit what Genies are, which is a subset of Databricks AI. But Databricks also has the concept of Databricks apps. You can publish apps like Streamlit apps, Dash apps. There's a few other Python frameworks that they support. There's workflows, or what are now called Lakeflow jobs, where you can orchestrate a ton of, transformations or data ingestion or data exports. And then there's Databricks SQL. So the compute side of Databricks, which is very, very important, um, is is very critical, because going back one slide, all this data is just sitting here. Cloud Data Lake, Delta Lake, it's just sitting there. You need compute to actually query the data. So on the compute side of things, there's different types of, they're called clusters, and Databricks SQL, or otherwise known as a SQL warehouse, is a special, it's not special, but it's the way, or the cluster type you should be using for anything SQL, including these genies that I'm about to show you. Okay. And then there's some other mentions of some other Databricks things that you can do AI wise that are beyond the scope of this talk, but a lot of stuff inside of Databricks, and it's all under one house. Okay, so here's the AI BI breakup basically. You've got, again, Delta Lake, Unity Catalog, and then in terms of AI BI, you've got AI BI dashboards and AI BI genies. Those are the two ways to kind of help end users, analysts, to understand and visualize data, or in the case of Genies, be able to ask questions of the data and get back results out of your data. Any questions so far? Okay, cool. Um, I'll promise I get to the demo real quick. I just need to go through a couple more things about these Genies. So conventional text to SQL tools. There are a lot of ways you could set this up from scratch. Okay, this is just a very generic diagram that shows if you were to take on a project like this from scratch, in whatever cloud, Amazon, Google, or Azure, you're going to be setting up some kind of LLM to understand the question that's being asked. Probably something in between the question and the LLM is you'll have to have an interface, a chat interface, a chatbot. Um, so that part is to understand the question. Then that large language model has to understand the semantics of your data. So if you've got dimensions and fact tables, or if you just have one very flattened table, I don't care. There needs to be a model that the LLM can use to understand what data to query based on the question that's asked. Um, and on top of that, then, after it understands the question and the model, it needs to go to the data source to actually go and query the data. So that's the step that all that is what Genie intends to build for us. It's a low code, no code way of doing all of this in one tool, in one subset of tools inside of Databricks. Okay, so a lot of time that you can save just going directly to the AI BI genies and getting to work. Um, in a pro code situation, you talk with an AI engineer, they might want to go this way, and that's fine. That's fine. But the way I saw these AI BI genies was not to replace the pro code way. It was just a fast way, a very fast way to get something up and running. So Yeah, the idea with the genies is that you ask the question, the chatbot's already designed for you. The chatbot's already there. You ask your question. Inside of the genie, you provide it the semantic understanding by giving it instructions and sample queries. Part of the instructions, and I'll show you this in the demo, is the data. And the data has to be it has to be very descriptive. All the columns have to have descriptions, all the tables have to have descriptions, or should have. If they don't, then you're kind of leaving it up to the genie to understand the names of your columns. Now, that's that's good, but it's also bad sometimes, right? If you guys are dealing with your tables raw in their raw form, you could have some table column names that, while you understand them, you got to think like the LLM is like a 5-year-old. They don't understand, when you say is active or is current, that might mean something to you that the genie gets wrong. So that's where, descriptions and things like that help. Um, the other thing that Genies have built in is feedback, a way for a user to say, nope, that doesn't look right, or, yep, that's exactly what I wanted, thumbs up. And benchmarks, a way to actually say the Genie is 80% accurate today, or 92% accurate, or 70% accurate, which is not that great. And again, with Unity Catalog, it's really easy to secure so that if you have like an HR Genie and it's talking about head count or something that's proprietary and you don't want just anyone to access, you can totally lock it down with Unity Catalog. Um, so just some tips on the Genie instructions to feed it. You can actually tell the Genie to interview the user. So say the user provides some very vague question like, um, how many employees uh, do we have? And you might want to ask the question, the interview question, as of this month, as of last month, or as of last year, something like that. You maybe it's very context driven, of course, depending on your situation, but you can have these clarifying questions as instructions to the Genie to tell it, ask this question of the user so that you make sure you're answering the question 100% correctly. Um, Business jargon, we all know, like there's tomato, like the way there's all these ways to refer to things like revenue or head count or sales or opportunities, whatever you're analyzing. Um, there's, depending on who's asking the question, three different people might ask the question three different ways. So this is where you get an opportunity to dial that into the Genie so that whether you say open opportunities or you say deals or you say whatever, it will translate that to the right SQL context to give you the right answer. I'm going to skip these so I can get to the demo. Sample SQL queries, I'll just show you that. I'll talk through the tips. Let's see. So this is the step by step. It's really simple. I'll show you guys how to we do these from scratch. This first step though, when you create a Genie, you want to pick a focused topic. And why do I say that? A lot of times our databases have a lot of different domains in them. So just picking on like something like manufacturing, you've got products, you've got assembling lines, you've got orders, you've got probably build people on the floor who are spending hours, assembling stuff. That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff. And like what I've seen a lot of times people try to use how they use these tools is they'll put in all the tables. They'll just shove them into a Genie and say, and try to ask a question, and the Genie comes back with something really crazy. And then they'll say, this isn't accurate or it doesn't work. Well, one of the best practices of a Genie is you got to pick a very focused topic. So in the case of a manufacturing, maybe just products. What products do we build? And what products make up the assemblies? That I would start with something that small in a manufacturing setting. Um, And one of the things you guys can do, we can talk about this a little later. It's not part of this talk, but you can set up many different genies. And in Databricks, they now have what's called agent bricks, where you can tell Databricks if it's a product question, ask this product genie. If it's an order question, ask the order genie. If it's uh, an hours question, ask the time card genie, So very cool stuff in Databricks. Some of it's in preview, but we've already tested some of this stuff and it works really, really well. Oh, and then step by step, pick a focus topic, add the instructions in SQL queries that make sense. Start prompting. You're going to go back and forth between these two, in order to get the most out of your Genie. And then always, 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 as you get more advanced with your Genie, you'll be wanting to test the benchmarking or the benchmark of your Genie to make sure that it's as accurate as you can make it. Okay. So let's get out of here and let's go into Databricks. So let me start from the top. Um, is this okay? Let me blow it up a little bit for the video, make it a little easier for people to see.
I will say that was a great overview, by the way, Angel. Like so
Yeah.
clear. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've had to explain this to a lot of people. Not a lot of people, but anybody new to a Genie, I just don't want them to like try to reinvent the wheel. I mean, we've already been through a lot of it, and um, what's nice too is whether you're starting one of these types of projects from scratch or if you're using the Genie, it's the same concepts, instructions, sample queries, benchmarks. You need all of that, no matter whether you're trying to build it from scratch or use a Genie. Um,
So
okay, so go
genies
ahead.
aren't really meant for the non-technical, right? It's still technical person driven.
Um, See, I like to think they're good for both. But they don't have to be for non-technical. They can be for technical. Um, that's actually probably where I'd start, Scott, just so you could see the benefits of it. Because if you can make it useful for a technical person, then as a technical person, you'll be like, dang, like we should put this into the hands of the non-technical people. And then that's the next kind of logical step. I'll show you what I'm talking about. One of the ways
Uh,
I kind of was testing out Genie at the beginning was looking at my metadata. Like I had this schema with a bunch of tables, and I imported the schema into a Genie, and I asked, how many times do I use this column name? And it came back with the right answer. And then I was like, how many tables contain um, information about people? And it came back, and it was pretty good. So I don't know, that then I started testing other use cases and more use cases. So it's I'd say it's for both. I'd say you could find use cases for both. I'll show you though, I think maybe your question might be more about, to develop a Genie, do you need to be a technical person? And
exactly.
yes, and you do. I'd argue that you do. Um, but see, people are smart, Scott. 5 years ago, I would have told you to master a tool like Power BI, you had to be a technical person. But I've seen non-technical people be good at Power BI too. So, I think it just takes the right kind of mind, um, like a person that's good with puzzles, because you do have to think a lot about um, the English language and all the places where the Genie has to understand the context. I'll show you here in a minute. Um, and then I think by the end of this, you'll see why I'm saying it's kind of for both, but it helps to be technical. So let me show you guys real quick, um, Unity catalog, or not Unity catalog, excuse me, the catalog. So the catalog of my database here. I want to show you guys because I want to show you guys the data. So I collected some Star Wars data just to kind of make it simple for all of, for me to demo this and for us to understand what I'm doing. So I've got it's called a bronze demo catalog. And in this bronze demo catalog, I have a Star Wars schema. schemas and databases in Databricks are interchangeable. So if I say schema or if I say database, I'm talking about the same thing. And then I've got these three base tables. I've got a table for characters, Star Wars characters. I got a table for Star Wars films, and I have a table for quotes. And I prefixed them with base, kind of thinking like that medallion architecture mindset that these are like my bronze tables. And then I have my gold views here. And the reason I did that was for kind of enrichment things. So what you'll find as you work with Genies is, and really with any data that you're putting analytics on top of, the raw data comes in a certain way, like say characters, and you get like the name of a character. Here you see the species, whether it's a Wookiee, an Ewok, etc., the gender. But then when I created a dimension, I think I added some stuff here. You can add more enrichment, like more flags or more or categories. And I'll talk to you guys about some examples of where enriching your data for use in Genie is helpful. And when I say enrich for the Genie, that's also another way to say enrich for AI. One of the very big benefits of using Genies to go hand in hand with your data is if you can make it good for a Genie, you're making it good for AI. Um, so let me show you guys now the data here, a sample of the data so you guys get familiar. Oh, I have to turn on the warehouse. This won't take more than a couple seconds. So this starter warehouse, that's the SQL warehouse or the Databricks SQL that I was talking about in on that slide. It's turning on right now. Okay, it's
Can
turned
I ask you a
on.
quick question while this is loading?
Yeah, go for it.
Hi, I'm Tristan, by the way. Thank you for the talk, Angel. So this database that we're looking right here, where is this hosted? Is this central to Databricks, or is this being hosted by a third-party service?
No, this is in Azure. So Azure, so
Okay.
Databricks is considered a first-party service in Azure. So all that you're seeing here is hosted in Azure. It's not like it's not a third party like what's a good example? Like Snowflake, I think. Snowflake is
Okay.
probably a good example where it's a third party. You're logging into a Snowflake server somewhere and the data's sitting in Azure. That's not how this works. This, these tables, this schema, all of this stuff, it lives in Azure. Now this UI is being hosted technically by Databricks. It's called the control plane, but the data plane is all Azure, all Azure.
Yeah, and it's all stored, right, in Parquet files.
It's
And so
all stored
that's
in
where,
Parquet files.
yeah, so when you were looking at the lake house, right, you've got your data storage, right, kind of like the actual data lake where all this data is stored. And now we're viewing that data, and then you're going to use a compute engine for running the SQL against it or whatever you want to. And that's where that separation between storage and compute comes into play.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate you taking a moment there.
Of
yeah,
course.
no, for absolutely a good question. Yeah. So this, but the hierarchy here is important in Databricks to understand. This catalog, this database within that catalog, um, and these tables and views, everything can be independently controlled security wise. So I can say people only have access to this view, for example, or they only have access to this database and everything in that database, or the catalog. So I happen to be an admin in this environment, so I have access to everything in this environment, but I can lock it down. Here's my films table. Films, how many Star Wars films were there? 11. So I've got 11 films. Is this all of, well, of course, yeah, this is not all of them. You notice Mandalorian's not in here. Well, no, Mandalorian's a TV show. It's not a movie. But anyway, the
There's a
films
movie
are there.
coming out.
Yeah, I think I'm missing a
You
couple.
don't have the Clone Wars cartoon movie.
Yeah, I know. I blame Kaggle. And then here's the quotes from the movie. Sample data. Now, one thing, see, look, here, one of them, may the force be with you. I am your father. Fear is the path to the dark side. We can have some fun with this, guys. So, um, that's why I picked this. I also picked this because I happened to do this talk in May. I don't know if you guys know, May the 4th be with you. So
Mhm.
I actually incubated this data set in May when I did this for the Sacramento SQL user group. So it was fun. We had some fun with this. Now, what was I going to say about this? Oh, I had a good thought. It just passed. All right. Anyway, so these are the views that I want to work with. These are like my gold views. Okay. So let me show you how easy it is to set one of these up. Okay. I'm gonna go to the Genie section, and I'm gonna create a new Genie. One of the first things it's asking me for is what data do you want to connect to? And I can connect to anything. I can connect to whatever catalog I have access to, whatever database I have access to, whatever tables within that database I have access to. So I'll go to raw demo. Wait, no, it's not raw demo. It was bronze demo. Yeah, bronze Star Wars database. And let me pick characters, since I think we're all we'll at least know one character to search. Um, okay. Now, one of the first things I want to call out to you guys is that all my columns and tables have a description. And this is important. Remember, I told you guys, if you guys don't provide textual information, then it's going to rely on the names of these columns. It's going to scan the name of these columns, and it does a pretty good job. It does a pretty good job. But in some cases, and we might come up with some examples where um, the description was really the key. So let's say, um, let's look at this data again. Let me bring up the catalog again. And let me bring up the characters so that we're familiar. So we refamiliarize ourselves real quick with the data inside of this table, so that we can come up with some questions, right? So we got the species of the characters, the gender, the hair color, eye color. Um, we have the year born, year died, homeworld, and description. Okay. And like if you look in here, some of these say Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, some of these say Sith Lord, etc. So, and dark side. So, one question I might ask is how many characters um, were there on the dark side? Again, all I did was create a table with descriptions, column descriptions, etc. And Um, here's what it did. It said you're looking for the total number of characters associated with the dark side of the Star Wars universe. I don't know how it came up with that Star Wars universe, but I think it did by looking at something in this description here. That's pretty cool. We'll look for that later. But look, this is the magic here. Here's the SQL code. I didn't have to write this. Um, and it did where description like dark side, and it added this little caveat here where description is not null. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, so here are some follow-up questions here, and this is exactly the follow-up question I was thinking. What are the names of the characters associated with the dark side? Again, this UI was built in. I didn't have to build it. And there we go. Anakin, Kylo, and I don't know who this guy is, Pong Krell. This is pretty cool. Now, here's the feedback loop. If that's correct, I'll hit yes. If it's not correct, I can hit either of these two. Um, Now I could, if I hit this middle one, what it does is it gives me the option of explaining what's wrong with the data set, and it will retry to answer the question. So, I could say something like Pong Krell really wasn't on the dark side or something. Submit and try again, and it will try to use that new logic. Or I could just say request review, add a comment, and then send this in for review. Okay, and
Quick
let me do
question,
this.
Angel.
Yeah, go ahead.
As you show this, and this may be a little bit more advanced, but thinking of like a type 2 dimension, right? Like Anakin was first like on the good side, and then he moved to like the dark side. Does this work only kind of like in point in time models and schemas, or is it advanced enough to be able to work with a type 2 dimension?
It can work with type twos.
That's pretty
You have
sweet.
to design your data set to work with um, point in time queries. That's one area that we've had to really work at really hard, because headcount is just a practical example. We were
Yeah,
dealing with headcounts point in time, which have to deal with like slowly change dimensions, which org people are in, who people report to, what their titles are, whether they're employed with us still or if they've been let go, etc. So um, to make sure the head count was accurate, we had it's not exactly a slowly changing dimension. It was a snapshot fact table, but same
mhm,
idea, right? We need to know the head count as of now. Like right now, we need to know what's current, and so we actually added an is current flag, and that helped the Genie to understand. Okay, you want what the head count is right now, but we also had to test it to say what was the head count, last month or last quarter or last
got it,
year.
got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it can be made both ways, and you can come up with creative ways to have the Genie answer, but it takes a little bit of this back and forth testing to make sure that it's writing the query right. And then once you start getting really deep into this, it's a combination of the metadata inside of the table, um, and a couple other things that we need to talk about. So let me get to um, the next thing, which is the instructions. So instructions in here are bulleted list instructions to tell the Genie how to how to behave, or not how to behave. I guess it is to behave, but how to answer the questions. Um, like maybe that's a good question to pose to the Genie to ask. So if the result set contains Anakin Skywalker, uh, alert the user. Well, no, that's actually pretty complicated. Let me say, actually, let's say if um, if the user asks for characters from the dark side, do not include Anakin Skywalker. This is where it's kind of a bit of an art it can be a bit of an art to provide the right instructions, but let's give this a shot. So if I say now, how many characters were from the dark side? Let's see what it does.
Nice.
It's a trip. Sometimes I'm like, how does it, how does it do it? But it figures it out. It figures it out. So, but these
Sorry,
general
Angel,
instructions.
ask another quick question here? What LLM is it using to interpret these general instructions?
I wish I knew that. I've
Okay.
been asked that a couple times.
Let me see if I can
Um,
find it.
I think it's a llama model. We think it's a llama model because that, open Databricks and OpenAI just got into a contract with one another. So I don't think this is using OpenAI. But we think it's llama, but we're not 100% sure.
And this also follow up, which you may not know the answer to. If it's submitting this to a llama model, is anyone storing those queries? Do you have any idea what gets done with the input you're giving it?
All of this is inside of what's called the Databricks Intelligent Platform, and it sits within this tenant. The endpoints for all the LLMs and everything sit in this in this blade or in this menu selection here, I think. So here's the different llama models, but the so it's all internal to um, inside of Databricks' data plane, and it's not being stored anywhere inside that we can query. Um, what is being stored is the conversation. So that's actually a good segue into the monitoring here. The monitoring tracks all of the questions that have been asked and the results and the feedback. I think I placed feedback on this one, didn't I? No, I didn't. But if I had, the feedback would be here. Um, and so this gets stored. Um, and I also obviously the instructions, the sample SQL queries, those get stored, but is that I believe is the extent of what gets stored. You can build apps on top of Genie. Genie has an API, and um, if you don't want this stuff just stored here, like you want it stored somewhere else, you can always store it, wherever, Cosmos DB, Postgres, whatever, right? But yeah, this is as much as gets stored. And this
And
is
that's
actually a
where
great.
I did find
Oh,
the answer on that, by the way.
oh, you
It
did?
used to, yeah, it was using Azure OpenAI, and now it's using compound models. Um, and so it's got like multiple models in the background that like get used depending on the query.
Okay.
But it's also mentioning data is governed by insecurity unity catalog, and the generator's response using metadata and instructions, and doesn't have access to the row level data.
Got it.
So yeah.
Thank you. I think that was the heart of my question, though I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, no, all
Mm-hmm.
good.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's nice is, again, it's respecting all the security in your tenant,
Yeah.
right? Of where you are, yeah, the control plane is then accessing in that storage plane, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
all the role-based access around that.
Oh, actually, another good example here. How many characters are human? Now we have that species column, right? And I notice I didn't say how many characters do we have where the species equals human, right? So did it interpret this correctly? Yes, it did. And it did that because of the species description here. So the code correctly shows species. And notice I said human lowercase. It put the human in the right camel case. It also did that. How did it do that? Because when you do add a data table in here, it does scan that table. Let me show you that here. Um, well, actually, no, it's in these example values. Example values, it scans that column for example values. So then it knows, like if you're trying to query for human, it knows how to the appropriate value to use. There's a value dictionary. You can actually edit those, I think, in here. Here we go. That's what it is. Example values, build value dictionary. I could also say species is the same as something else. I don't know. Again, 3 different people might ask the question 3 different ways, whether they ask for species or character type or whatever. I could put as many synonyms in here as we want. The other thing you can do in here is override the description. Now, I don't suggest doing that. In a kind of a properly governed lakehouse, you'll want to maintain your descriptions in source control, especially when we talk about productionalizing this in a production setting with production genies. The last thing you want is for people to be in here manually changing this, because unfortunately genies are not version controlled yet. So if people start making changes in here and you're unaware and the Genie starts to produce incorrect results because of something somebody did, you'll have no idea. So just something to consider. The last thing is, well, not the last thing. There's a lot of instructions here. You can add join conditions. Like if I wanted to, I could add the quotes fact table. And then in the instructions, say what's the key join between those tables, left and right and join condition. This is actually new, SQL expressions. Define business concepts as SQL expressions. I've not worked with this yet. I'll have to read up on that. But the more important one that I wanted to show you was SQL queries. So the way these work is when you add a SQL query, for example, let's say this one. Let's say I want to add this query as a sample SQL query. So you've got to add 2 things. You got to add the query, and you have to add the question that query answers. So how many characters are human? And save. Now you can, let me go back in here. I skipped over something. You can add parameters here. So if I wanted to parameterize this where this was like a species parameter, I could do that. And then, the question could be how many characters are, and I could put in here, species, sorry, like this. I could do that, okay, optionally, which can make a question or a sample SQL query more useful or applicable to more use cases. Now, I will tell you out of learning, there's another lesson learned is you can go crazy here. You can go very crazy, and I caution you because the thing I've now kind of instructed my guys to always go through the order of is when Genie doesn't quite answer it correctly, make sure we check that the columns are correct. Make sure that we've done everything possible to make sure that example values are right, the descriptions are right, the table descriptions are right. Okay, if everything's right there, then go to the instructions. The instructions, you may or may not add an instruction here that like conflicts with the column description. So you got to be careful, and that could confuse the Genie. And then lastly, like our last resort, or at least mine is the last resort, is to add a SQL query. I fought a couple guys on this for a couple weeks because we were at like 80% accuracy, and I was trying to get us up to 90, and it was just nuts. We were writing SQL queries, and I just finally said, this is nuts. Let's start over. Let's start over and create the least amount of SQL queries as possible and be able to answer everything with the metadata of the tables and the instructions. The other kind of point between SQL queries and instructions that's important is these instructions are global. Just assume that they're global, meaning whether you're talking about like it's a global instruction, like something like Anakin Skywalker is not from the dark side. Like This is global now. So if you ever want to ever count Anakin to the dark side, this should not be here. That, that kind of thing. Okay. Um, and then lastly, the benchmarks. So the benchmarks are useful. Let me copy this question here. Actually, let me take Notepad and copy this question and copy the SQL query just to give you a taste of what benchmarking does. It's so useful because what happens is you have so many SQL queries, so many instructions, and now how accurate are you? Well, how many different questions should there be baseline to help you establish what the accuracy of your Genie is? It's a very useful exercise. Um, so we'll add this one as an example. How many characters are, let's actually change this. How many characters are Wookiee? And the ground truth should be this guy, but we'll change human to Wookiee. Okay, and this is a benchmark question. All right, so now I'm going to run the benchmark and imagine like I have 20 questions here about Star Wars quotes, Star Wars characters, Star Wars films, right? So what it's going to do is it's going to run through each of those questions against my Genie with the context that it currently has, the current data, the current instructions, the current SQL queries, all of that. And so now if I had 10 questions and 9 of them were correct, it's going to record that it was 90% accurate. Or if it answered only half of them correct, it's going to say it was 50% accurate. All right. So let's look and see what this is saying. Aha. So I actually said I put the wrong value in there. Wookiee is 2 E's, not 1 E. Okay. I stand corrected. So it says that it's bad, but it's not really bad. It's my answer was bad, correct? So going back to my question, I'll come back and fix this. It's a live demo. You guys are seeing everything, full disclosure. Run benchmark again. And see, this is the work of Genies. This is a great example of, I changed something, let me run. Let me rerun the benchmark. And this is important, an important exercise. What you guys just saw here is so critical because now like is my benchmark question right? Now the testing, like I'm testing the testing, right? So we've had to evaluate questions. Some questions we've had to throw out because we're like, man, Genie always gets this question wrong. So so we try like heck to try to get it to answer it correctly. And in the end, I kid you not, I've gone on long walks talking to people and I'm going, what's important here? And I say, we ended up saying, what's important is the metrics. It's got to have the metrics right. If you say how many employees were there last month or last Friday, um, and it incorrectly guesses the day, I really don't care. Like I care more about that the metric is correct. So at the end of the day, we decided, you know what? Let's not query so much about these questions like last Friday, last Monday. We're killing ourselves for that. Let's just check that the metrics are right. So um, I don't know. That might look different for you if you ever implement one of these, but I know for us, it was a really good exercise because it helped us to understand what are we really measuring with these benchmarks. So yeah, the accuracy here, it was 0%. Now it's 100%. And now over time, any change you make in here, you'll want to re-benchmark. Or, you make a change to a table change this column description, a table description, again, run another benchmark. And I've told my guys, like, if you're working on a Genie and I don't see a single benchmark all day, I'll think you're not working because you have to have run a benchmark at least by the day end. If you're making any changes in here whatsoever, there better be a benchmark. And I proved this to them. I said one day I ran like 9 benchmarks throughout the day, and I'm doing all kinds of stuff. I'm not just working with Genie, I'm doing other things. So I told them as much. I said, if I don't see you guys run a single benchmark on a given day, I don't believe that you guys did any development whatsoever. And lastly, one other thing, in prompt engineering, this isn't necessarily a, a best practice, as I'd say, it's something probably that AI engineers, prompt engineers should know, is this new chat. So this new chat button is important when you add a new description or a new instruction or a new SQL query. Why? Is because I've had guys that and gals that put in several questions here, and it turns out to be a long list of questions, right? But see, the more if we ask, like I asked that double question, right? I asked first how many characters were on the dark side, and then I asked it to give me the names, right? That's 2 questions. I could keep going. I could say, well, where do they live and how old are they and when did they die and blah, blah, blah. But then at the end of that thread, if I ask, well, how many people are on the good side? Now, like all that work, I might be confusing it. So this new chat is important to reset the context. And it's important too, if you change an instruction, a description or a SQL query, you have to, this is one of the best practices, is to create a new chat. Or again, it's not so much a best practice as it is you're resetting the context. You're starting from square one. All right. Okay, let me show you guys a couple other things. I think I've already talked a lot about these best practices. So focus topic, well-documented, clean tables. I don't care if you're not in Databricks, if you're trying to do this in a Snowflake or whatever, or Fabric, you got to have well-documented, clean tables. This is true. Genie scans column names first. The reason I put this in here is because I had an HR table with a column for the start date and the termination date, but they weren't called that. Somebody had in designing the table, you decided to call those dates effective date and expiry date. If any of you have dealt with slowly changing dimensions, you guys know that that's like exactly what you would call the slowly changing dimension housekeeping fields. So I can't tell you how long I was batting my head against the wall trying to get just like, how many employees do we currently have? It's like it wouldn't take the effective date into account, the correct one. So I had to change the name of the column to employee start date and employee termination date, so that way Genie could understand. So column names really are important. Yeah, and ensure your instructions, queries, and metadata that they do not conflict. Over time and over, trying to dial in your Genies, you don't realize it, but if you have a second set of eyes come in, like I would invite, probably somebody like Jackie who knows nothing about these Genies, like, hey, can you check my column names and check the instructions and just tell me if you see anything that conflicts? Because that way she'll find it. Whereas me, I'm like been developing it for 2 days. I'll never find it because I'm like, I oversee it. And that's what I've helped my guys to do. A very critical point here that I'll say is your dimensional model, your fact tables and your oh so good dimensions and fact tables, great for Power BI, not so great for AI. And I've actually confirmed this with our VP of AI that flattened data sets are the way to go with AI. And this is another temptation to try to resist. I have a lot of people in the Power BI realm that are very good with Power BI semantic modeling, they want to they want to keep using that. But I mean, over time, I think they'll learn. And that's what we found out on our project is, flatten those dimensions and facts. Yes, they're long. Yes, it might look ugly. Yes, it might be counterintuitive. So much easier for a genie to understand. Um, and I'd say simplify too. You know, if you look at your table from a Genie perspective, look at your table and column names. Uh, try to like think in turn again. Like the Genie is a 5-year-old. If you have 100 columns and all these flags, do you need all those flags? Do you need all that stuff, or can you consolidate? Two practical use cases where this came up. We analyze at my current client, we analyze attendance in buildings. They have a region, they have a site name, and they have a building number and an address and a city. Sometimes people say London. Sometimes people say New York. Sometimes people say LMVG. Sometimes people say the address 950 mod. So what did we do? We concatenated all those fields into one location field, into one, and got rid of all of that minutia. And it helps simplify the problem. I can't tell you guys how much, because now, regardless of whether they say the address, the name, the building code, whatever, it's right. It works. So we had to test it a little bit, refine it, but we concatenated those fields, and we concatenated organization. We had L1, the level 1 org, level 2 org name, level 3 org name. We concatenated it so that way, regardless of whether somebody said engineering or somebody said, you know, uh, you know, program engineering, that it would understand, oh, program engineering is the L3 name, and engineering is the level 2 name. They're all concatenated, so it's one search field. Might go against the industrial way of working with Power BI, but it's better for AI. It's just better. It's simpler. I've talked to you guys about ongoing benchmarks. And the last bit I talk about here is just how you can all the different ways you can use these genies. It's impressive. You can use them in Databricks apps. I actually have one in. If you guys want to see it, I can turn it on to show you guys that it's just a different look and feel. But then again, if that's what you're going for, you want it to look and feel like your website or your SharePoint site or your whatever site. You can use a different site and call the Genie using APIs. The Genie API, it's actually not in public preview anymore. It went GA. I forget when it went GA. Maybe Greg, you can look that up for me. I think it was at this last Data and AI Summit, which was July, if I'm not mistaken. But Greg will tell me here.
Yeah, I'm looking it up.
The Genie API can help you start and continue a conversation. So again, start the question and then have the follow-up question, that all has one conversation ID. So that you can keep that intact with the Genie API.
You went GA in June, so just 1 month.
June.
You were close, dude.
I was close. All right. Don't trust me for betting. So agentic AI workflows can be done. And what I mean by agentic AI is like have the app decide which Genie is the correct one to ask. Again, kind of going to that manufacturing example, is like if I want to ask the product Genie a product question, or if I want to ask, a time card question for my the guys on the floor, you can create a separate app that does that. And Databricks apps, or the Genie API, excuse me, there's no extra cost to it. I should have shown you guys this too. In the Genie, all that you need to configure one of these things or to get it working is a SQL warehouse. So the same compute type that you'd use to issue queries to your data, to write AI BI dashboards is the same compute that you would use to turn on this capability. So you need a SQL warehouse to query the data. So if you already have this and you already have a SQL warehouse, then you can spin one of these up and start using it right away. Um, and that's what I saw, honestly, when I started getting deeper and deeper with this, is I started to see like, wow, we could take advantage of this like right now. It's side by side with our data. It's governed through Unity Catalog. I don't have to set up a whole bunch of Azure stuff or whatever. I can just get to work. And it's really paid off a lot because as a team, my team has learned all these things about, what's the good shape of data for an AI agent to understand. Uh, what are the right types of instructions, or, what should we be writing SQL queries, or what's a good column description? Scott, you asked me earlier about technical or non-technical, right? Let me show you this other Genie. So I'll give you the example I was trying to show you where, like, you see all these catalogs, or even within the bronze demo catalog, I have all these databases, and under all these databases, I have all these tables. So what I did was I created a Genie that I brought in the information schema. Are you familiar with the information schema, like in Postgres or SQL Server?
Yeah.
So, you've got columns like table name, column names, etc., right? So I just fed it this one uh, information schema, the tables, right? And I can ask this question, how many tables are there in the Star Wars schema? I don't have to like look up a query, or try to find some blog with the correct information schema, whatever. Look, it's 7 tables.
Okay.
Problem solved. That's that's for a technical person, right? Or how many tables have a column named species? I had this question come up by one of my BI analysts for a certain surrogate key. Hey, what all tables use this surrogate key? And I was like, oh, great. Like, I got to go look in the information schema and figure out like what to query, blah, blah, blah. But now, oh, it didn't do what I thought it did. So I think this is a glitch. Here, let me start a new chat. Um, So I've done these kind of side genies for things like this, or things like the query history in Databricks. Like if I wanted to know how many times, or what was the use case? I wanted to know if a specific service principal was being used to query this table. Or, another one was, another use case is anybody using this table? Like, so I'd searched the query history and said, give me any query with the table name, blah, blah, blah. And and all I had to do was
Nice.
add the query history into the data, and, it answered the question. I'm not sure. There is no information available schema about the columns of each table. So maybe I'm not asking the right question here. There's there's other questions here. Who are the owners of the different tables in the schema? You know, uh, again, this is for technical people, but like if you have an HR genie, if you have I don't know, what your last client was, like batteries, right? So sales, probably it was like like maybe they
Mhm.
sell batteries and stuff. So, what was the sales last week compared to this week? Or last
Okay.
month compared to this month, or how are we against goals, that kind of stuff. Um, rather than you having to write the query and ask the user a bunch of questions, the user could maybe there could be a world where the user could ask the question and the Genie could interview the user. Hey, are you talking about this store or all stores? Are you talking about this region or whatever? And then out comes, the data. Um, it really helps, A, because it helps you understand your data even better. B, it helps the user understand like how to ask the right questions, including yourself. So
Sure.
it's been a trip to see the evolution of my team personally, because now we're talking about terminologies that we've never talked about before. And it's been really, really good because it's kind of gotten us to the same level as the business without having to sit in the business shoes of like, answering questions or running around. It's like we're doing it just by setting up these genies and trying to make them as accurate as possible.
All right.
Um, there,
I do
oh,
have another question.
yeah.
So way back when I was working with Dynamics, um, it was loose and not enforcing like proper schemas for the database. So you would have a table name with the same column name,
Uh-huh.
which would blow up in other setups, I guess would be the word. Different applications that actually enforce proper labeling,
Uh-huh.
because you're not supposed to have a column name named the same as your table, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So,
Not supposed to.
so I mean, does Databricks handle that, or does it throw an error and you have to update all that information?
Um,
And that goes back
Not,
to your comment about clean and well documented.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are constraints you can add in Databricks to check for things like that, or you can set up, depending on how you are building the table, you can, run unit tests before or after deploying something or during deployment too. Um, but there's nothing like built in to, at least from a Genie perspective, Genie will not go in and fix the data for you. Genie is very much, uh, how do you call it? Descriptive analytics, where you're asking a question, you're going to get a set of results back. It's not for um, like creating alerts or creating emails for you, that kind of
Sure.
thing. For that, you'd need to, build, you need to go a little bit outside of Genie, but you could leverage Genie to kind of to detect that situation. You got a column and a table, or excuse me, a table with a column of the same name. It could detect that, and then, but then you'd need something outside to to do uh, the action part of it, or if you wanted it to automatically handle it for you. Now that's the next question is, if you wanted that kind of workflow to automatically change something for you, just hope you have to do so carefully so that it doesn't like break something else downstream. Maybe that column
Sure.
name is dependent, um, or something else in the process is dependent on that column name. But something else that's really useful for that kind of stuff is SQL alerts. Here we go. Alerts. So this is kind of off topic, but you can create an alert based on a query here. Um, I'll just pick this query so you can see. Um, I'll call this alert test alert. So imagine this query said something like, select a row out of that information schema table where the column name equals the table name, right? So I have that query here, create the alert, and I can say if this fires, um, I can set it on a schedule, and if it fires, it'll throw me an email message. We do this for all types of data quality checks, freshness, data, timeliness checks, uh, data integrity checks,
Okay.
things like that. So I'd say this
Okay.
would be more something, it's not what I think. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but
Yeah, I mean, in a roundabout way, it sounds like it doesn't enforce anything. It'll take that in and not blow up on you. Like I think it was with Power BI, dumped the raw tables in and it didn't like it.
oh, oh, I see.
It
I
was
see.
some other tool that actually has that constraint,
Okay.
which I
Okay.
mean, honestly, I think Dynamics should have had that constraint.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
SQL's on the back end and it
Yeah.
shouldn't have allowed that because that's not
I
proper
don't
data
think,
structure. So
I think Databricks will allow that. The column name being the same as a table name. Where where it will conflict is obviously like if you're trying to insert data into a view, it won't let you do that. It'll say, you can't insert data into a view. You need a table. So things that it cannot do, it'll error. Or if you're not the owner of a particular object, like if Greg created an object and he didn't set the owner to anybody else besides him, I may not be able to write to it or read from it because he's the owner. That's how Databricks works. If you create a Genie, unless you're an admin, nobody else can see it because you're the owner. So things like
that's
that are constraints that Databricks puts in place. Um, and where things, you start to see failure or error messages and stuff. But column name and table names being the same, I think it will let you do that, unfortunately.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, with security, can you put security around the Genies so where they can't access certain tables or columns?
100%. Yeah. So,
Oh,
on the Genie here, the Genie, there's a security here. Um, everything pretty much has a share button here. Um, tables are a little different. Tables have grants and denies, like specific grants or specific denials. But Genies, dashboards, notebooks, they all kind of have the same sharing paradigm. So if I wanted to share this with who else is on my team? Cami Dat. So I'll share this with him and now he has access. But here's the thing, Cami, if he does not have access to this data, he won't. If he tries to ask a question, it will tell him that he does not have access to that data. So he also needs to be at his group or his permission chain, through some group or something, has to let him at least
oh,
query
okay.
that data. Yeah,
So it takes the user's permissions and not necessarily the throughput.
correct.
Genie, the Genie is just a conduit, essentially. It's
Correct.
not
Yeah,
okay.
it's a wrapper if you want to think of it like that. The data itself, and this is the beauty about Unity Catalog, it has all these layers. It has the catalog permissions, the database permissions, and the individual objects. It even goes down to the columns. You can restrict columns permissions too. But here, what that looks like, I think it's under share here, right? Manage permissions. Yeah. So if I wanted to grant um, or revoke, I could do either here to an
Hmm.
individual account or to a group. And usually this is handled with groups.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, I didn't talk about the security much in my last talks. But yeah, it's a combination of the permissions on the data and permissions on the Genie, and one more thing, permissions on the compute.
Mm.
Yeah, person has to have the right permissions to use this
Oh,
compute.
okay.
No runaway queries. That's kind of
No
nice.
runaway queries. Yep,
That's
no.
kind of nice.
Yeah, it's
Huh.
all very controlled, because it's all under one house, right? So that's why, you know, I like Databricks. The Databricks Academy does a good job of training people on the permissions. Um, But in order to really kind of give that the proper respect, you gotta know everything that was within Unity catalog. That's why I like to show this, is because there's a lot. You can't just start going in and playing with stuff. I mean, you can, but then when you start to see like, why is it giving me this error? It's because you haven't assigned permissions to compute, or I added the table. Why can't the person use the G? Oh, they don't have permission to the table, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's good stuff.
Thanks for the great question, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is good.
Well,
Thank you.
security is always a big thing, right? And I mean, from
Mhm.
last week, we learned that AI in general does not look at security when you're looking at like Copilot and that within your own tenant.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
Responsible AI.
it has basically access to whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They'll slowly smarten up, and add more of these fine-grained controls, hopefully,
Yeah.
as time comes on. But I mean, again, Databricks is it's so, I think, far ahead of the curve when it comes to, just AI. Um, and this is just testament to it, right? They've thought about all the fine-grained controls. And that's why people love Databricks, right? It's seriously such a like engineer's dream, I think, because of all the knobs, tubes, and things you can twist. And
Yeah.
the fact that they built even something like kind of more low code with the Genie and starting to like bleed that way, I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It definitely, I mean, I believe this is how people are gonna, work in the not too distant future. Um, just like Power BI took off and
Yeah.
I used to think, uh, I used to want my consultants to train on Kimball methodology before they start doing anything with Power BI.
Hmm.
Now people they don't need take a Kimball class. It's just intuitive. That blew my mind, but I literally saw that firsthand, that you don't need to have you don't need to have those Kimball books to be successful with Power BI. This is eventually going to make its way into the hands of these young bucks that are very talented and can understand this stuff, and they're going to take off. So we got to be, we got to, stay ahead of it, of course, but also learn, what makes it successful. And I feel like um, there's competing technologies with this that you're right, Greg. It's good to have this as a frame of reference, because you can look at those other technologies and be like,
Hmm.
where's the benchmarking? Where's the monitoring? Where's the
Hmm.
this? Where's the that? Um, Data agents in Fabric is a great example of that. Data agents in Fabric, it's almost identical to this. You have to add instructions, you have to add SQL queries, and you have to add data. And it works great, like just with the chat bot alone and everything. But there's no monitoring, there's no benchmarks. So there's opportunity there for a company to build that stuff out and, build a package around it,
Yeah.
um,
We,
which, yeah,
two comments to that. One is, it's funny because when you hear Arun talking, I was at one of his like Q&As around Fabric, they're still promoting dimensional models for like Fabric Data Agent and their use of, um, SQL Genie or whatever you want to call it in the Fabric world. So I
yeah,
think this like, we're seeing kind of this dichotomy of like, okay, do you really need to know Kimball? What is that future of Power BI and Fabric? It seems kind of a gray area. And then, but in the sense of what you're showing here, it it is so easy with flat tables. Like why make it more complex? So I think it'll be
yeah,
interesting to see like 3 years from now what is the best practice that shakes out, or is it kind of both? Is it more like use case or model or report driven that it's going
yeah,
to make you actually go towards that dimensional model? And what I've typically said is, unless you had BI first, it's really hard to like confirm the AI. But like doing the dimensional model and then blowing it up also doesn't make sense.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would 100% agree. And I'll also pick up on something you just said too, the BI part. You have to dial in the BI part, because you got to understand your trends and stuff too. Like if you just jump from collecting the data immediately going into AI, you haven't
Yeah.
tested it.
Right.
You gotta have to have something that stands the test of time. And
Mhm.
then you're like, that's what we're doing now is we're bouncing the Genie off our reporting. We know the reporting is dialed in because we've tested the heck out of it, right?
Reconciled
Okay,
it, go through like
exactly.
all the human cycles. That's the human part, right? That's the human part you can't
Exactly.
get away from.
No. Yep, 100%. Yep, and you need the business people, you need the second set of eyes, the testers, the good questions, and then when you go to this, then it brings on more questions, but it's like I said, it's a bit of an art, but when you go through it, you understand your data so much better. It's just
Totally.
it goes really hand in hand because you're writing documentation not for the sake of documentation, you're writing it for the sake of AI to understand the context. When you look
Yeah.
at it that way, and that's the epiphany I had at the Data and AI Summit when I saw somebody demo this. I was like, OMG, like now I get how why table description and column descriptions are so important, right? They're the last thing a database developer or a BI developer or a data engineer thinks about, but now
hmm
it's at the forefront. Now, before we release any new tables in my lakehouse, I ask my guys, did you create the column names and the column descriptions, table descriptions? And now they're like, yes, I did. Okay, cool. They know because they know that it's important for this, So and those descriptions too. Like I had one developer do one set of descriptions that were like totally developer. They were written for a developer.
Yeah.
They said things like 95% of the time this column is null and it contains sample values like this and that. And I go, that's useless. Like this column, I want to know like this species column. Uh, Perfect. It said, what was it? Whether they're human, Wookiee, or Ewok, find out who belongs to what species. I mean, that's like human readable. You understand it. Anybody reading can understand that, right? Um,
It's
but the
meaning engineers
developer,
need to talk humanly.
yeah, and him
That's
and
the
I,
real, yeah, that's the
we'd have these great arguments. They were good arguments, but he'd be like, "No, I need this description for me," and I'm like, "But yeah, that's just you. What about everybody else?" Um,
What's
so
funny, using ChatGPT to help write your instruction sets and your descriptions is such a meta move, and it's actually really good at it. Like,
it
because
is,
it, I was trying to build like a general instruction set for being able to, query like meeting notes, and I gave it like, a few sentences, and it broke it out to like page and a half worth of instructions. And I was able to kind of fine tune that. I was like, things I didn't think about putting in the instruction set, it did.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. One of the cool things that they plugged into Databricks, I think it was a couple years ago, was the ability to add these column descriptions
Oh yeah, with
automatically.
Mosaic, and that's what it was using Mosaic AI for, right?
I think so. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So base quotes. Yeah, this was already done. Let me see if I can find gym demo, gym data. Oh, that's a volume. Oh, here we go. Census park data. Yeah, I happen to load this squirrel census data, but look, AI suggested description. Yeah, it's a very funny data set. This table contains data related to observations made in various parks focusing on wildlife sightings, park conditions, and visitor experiences. It did all this on its own. And if I
Wow,
wanted to generate the descriptions for the columns, I can do so here, right inside of the catalog. So
that's pretty
Databricks
sweet.
is, yeah, Databricks has really dialed this in. But then again, look, like some of these may not be what I wanted to say, like start time marks the beginning of the observation period, providing a temporal context for the date. Okay, that's pretty good. But, I might decide this is not good enough, so, I'll change it. But this is a great start, right? Like
Yeah.
if I just wanted to do this quick, this is a perfect start. Save all, I'll accept this.
We need to
Boom.
go squirrel watching. No, all of a sudden I want to go squirrel watching.
I do that from my window all the time.
I have so many squirrels outside of mine. Totally.
Yeah. And I mean, what better way to profile this data than to put this in a Genie and start asking questions, right? So really cool stuff, man. I'm super excited about this. I can't wait to see more use cases. And I haven't even shown you guys Agent Bricks because I'm not ready. I haven't played enough with Agent Bricks, but that's the next level is
Next user group, dude.
next
Next
user
user
group.
group, agent
Next
bricks.
Agent
That's the
Bricks.
orchestration one, right?
That's the agentic one where you could set up what's called a facilitator, Scott, to facilitate which genie the question goes to, and you can combine answers from different genies for more answers. It's crazy. It's really
Yeah,
crazy
we
stuff.
briefly covered it last week
Oh, did you? Oh,
in
okay,
the
cool.
in-person one. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, good, good. Yeah, and there's more stuff you can do with Agent Bricks besides that. So that's a good goal, Greg. I'll definitely take that up. Yeah, take
Love
that
it.
on. Yeah.
Well, I'll say, Angel, this was such an awesome presentation. We could probably ask you more and more questions, but yeah, I think this is a good point to just say thank you. And for those that
Yeah.
are still on
Thank
this
you.
call, let's give you a quick round of applause.